Welcome back to the newsroom. We continue analyzing the presidential debate and the manner in which the media has covered the post-debate events. And of course, in studio, we have communication lecturers, Dr. Nancy Buka and Koki Ochieng. And we also have Eric Odwor, who is the Secretary General of the Kenya Union of Journalists, for the better part of the debate, both for the running mates debate and the presidential debate. Your thoughts on the analyzing panel and whether they hit the nail on the mark?
Okay, I didn't watch much of it, but what I saw, I wondered first who the analysts are, because I thought that if it is an analyst, it should be a seasoned person, somebody I've seen oftenly. I know a few were, but for me it was a bit confusing. Again, I just felt that, I don't know whether it was time constraints or what the issue was, but I just felt that there was a lot of back and forth between the analysts, and I was not sure exactly what the direction of the discussion was.
Right, and for even Eric, as you come in, of course, being in the newsroom, all of us, we can also put into context the fact that we're supposed to have, was it 6, 7 candidates, and only one showed up, and so there was a lot of saving face going on, especially with the panel. But Odwor, your thoughts on how the panel handled it? Even
if it's an issue of saving face, I think the post-debate analysis actually was anti-climax, and I think exhibited a lot of mediocrity in terms of the panelists who were there. If you look at some of the panelists, I saw one actually was screaming in a lot of emotions, trying to give the views and trying to analyze actually what was at the presidential debate. So I think when we are also selecting analysts, we also need to be very serious in terms of looking at the people who can put into context the debate, so that we can then help the public to understand what was going on. It's not about the analysts now also trying to poke holes into what was said. Actually, the role of an analyst is just supposed to put into context so that somebody can understand that this debate was going on, this is what was said, and this is how you're supposed to understand it.
Did the post-debate analysis really put into context what was happening, Dr. Buka?
I think let me start by, the importance of an analyst in a debate such as the presidential debate. And, questions about, I think people have been asking, do we even need them, to come onto the studio and provide a pre-debate analysis and a post-debate analysis. They are a very vital component and constituent in, in a debate such as that. So in terms of their relevance, yes, they are relevant. In terms of what their roles are, I think in a pre-debate we are looking at them, setting out what are the expectations, because analysts are supposed to come into that discussion, one, having read the mood of the people, the voters, the citizens, and asking themselves what is it that people would like to hear from the various, debaters in that particular context. They also, provide, from a policy point of view, what is expected. They critique the debate, but also some of the campaign messaging in terms of the manifestos and some of the documents that these candidates have provided. It doesn't mean that you can also not have supporters of certain candidates in that panel. Yes. They're important because then they provide, a context, and they provide a variety. My challenge is that, in terms of constitution, I think, going forward and through all these processes, every experience that media goes through, such as this presidential debate, we need to ask ourselves, this is a lesson for us, and we learn from it. So what are some of the lessons that we can learn? And one of them is, how do we constitute the panels that then analyze some of the, some of these forums? One, having a variety of voices is extremely important. I think for me, the frustration was that whereas, and again, the challenge being that, we did not have, all the contestants come forward. So there were certain issues that, I was asking myself, issues about, the 2/3 gender rule and the constitutional crisis that we are getting into. Somebody, who understands gender and governance and, basically analyzing some of the statements that were being made by the presidential candidate and some of the things that concern us. Somebody who also fact checks some of the things that were being said. Right. So I think, as Eric says, it was an anticlimax, because whereas you're looking at analysts who then would provide perspective, as he says, and, you know, go a lot more in-depth and fact-check and, you know, provide, you know, a critique or a review from some of the things that concern us, that was not there. Then, you know, and this is my last thought on that, you know, the body language, you know, somebody who's there to analyze rhetoric, to analyze the body language, because it's important. This is television. So body language is just as important as the messages that are being, you know, that are being
right,
put
and
forth.
that's something I was going to touch on, especially the body language and the etiquette that the candidates exhibited during this particular debate. Koki?
The candidates or the analysts?
The analysts, right.
Okay. For me, honestly speaking, I think an analyst must be grounded in their area of, you know, study. I just think that they need to have some grounding, like she says, to provide the context. Now I see everybody's a political analyst. And for me, I think for you to be a political analyst, you have to have a good background in that particular area. Again, I don't know whether it is the constitution of the panelist or just probably the way the discussion was you know, cut out to be. Analysis is about thought processes. It's about adding value to what has been said. It's not about quick quips of statements about what you think very briefly. No. So for me, I think the whole issue about that aside analytical desk must be thought through. It is a bit, I know it is a replica of what is seen in CNN and such during elections, but then again, it should really be thought through, because it should add value to the presidential debate and not take away value from it.
And of course, it's becoming increasingly clear now that this presidential debate will continue to be part and parcel of Kenyan politics and the elections. Eric, what would you say the media now needs to learn? Because this is the second debate. I don't know if we learned anything from the first debate, but what can we do as media to better the next debate?
Yes, I think I agree with you that there are some lessons that as the media we learned from the debate. So I think in the future, we also need now to look at how do we come up with a better way of organizing the debate, because the organization was one of the issues that some of the candidates raised and the reason why they did not turn up for the debate. So as the media, I think the number one lesson is how do we now come up with a better way of organizing this, so that everybody feels part and parcel of the debate and make it a political culture that every election year we must always have a debate. And even now try also to make it also mandatory for the governors, because right now even our governors are very important people in our political system, so that we can also hold them to account and scrutinize some of the things they have done, what they have promised the public and what they have delivered, and those who also come in. Secondly, what we also need to do, like, talk about analysts. And again, we also now try to think through how do we come up with a properly constituted panel of analysts who can help the public to understand the debate and the issues that were discussed there then, so that we do not end up with the anticlimax that what we had. Then again, we also should also learn on how now to even to engage the presidential and other candidates, so that this is seen as an exclusive process, not something like, because one of the things that was raised that it was like it was a business or a commercial interest that actually took precedence over the interests of the candidates. Then the last one is that actually we've learned that the media must assert itself and its authority to provide leadership in a country and be part of a political process, not as spectators. And I think that is something that I've also learned, so that in an election year, we see media as part of the political process, that we also contribute to the political process. We don't sit on the fence, then thereafter we start criticizing the politicians.
All right. Dr. Buka, what in your view, can we do to cement this culture of this debate? Because the biggest criticism has been that it was just copy-pasted from the U.S. context. It's very foreign to Kenya. Is there a way the media can contextualize this in the Kenyan context?
Thank you. I think one is that we shouldn't leave this process towards the tail end of an election. One of the very pertinent roles of media in society is playing that watchdog role of, the political class and ensuring that they remain accountable. And so, we need to have a continuous debate culture. We shouldn't wait for, an election to be able to do that. A number of the candidates, I mean, whoever carries the day, has made certain promises in terms of what they would like to deliver in the first 100 days of office. And so it would be important that at that particular point, then media, comes in and interrogates. This is what they promised to deliver in 100 days. This is where we are at. So that then, right from the beginning, we then, cement that role of media as being the watchdog and being in that place of, the citizens who would not then, ordinarily have access to some of these leaders. The second thing is that I think one of the things that I have liked in this election is the fact that, media has also gone out. I think the other day I was watching the, gubernatorial debate in Kirinyaga, and the media was there. We've been able to watch the gubernatorial debate in Western Kenya. We've been able to see the Nairobi senatorial and gubernatorial debate take place. Right. So that, for me, is important, because then we are able to see, what these leaders are, first of all, even who they are, because for a number of people, we just know certain leaders and not all of them. Right. So in letting the providing a platform for the candidates and the voters or the citizens to be able to interact is extremely important. But lastly, I think one of the challenges with the execution, basically the planning process of this debate, is that and again it's a lesson for media that it needs to be an all-inclusive process, so that then we have political parties, contestants taking this as a very important process towards an election. So one of the things that we then want to ask ourselves is, how do we then involve various stakeholders in this process so that you do not have a situation like what we witnessed, the day before yesterday.
In this particular election. And of course, another criticism has been with regard to the credibility of the media, especially from the president's team, that the media kept advertising and telling Kenyans the president is coming, despite clear communication from his team that the president was not coming. But Koke, let's finish up with you with this one. In the matters media, what media needs to learn for the next debate?
Media needs to learn that it's an important game player and game changer. That's basically what the media is, because in so much as people believe that the media has been, loop-sided, not being able to stand out for themselves, I think this gives you just a platform to just fly, because at the end of the day, you are the fourth estate, or we are the fourth estate, and we set agenda and we decide what should be important. So for me, that's one of the things that the media needs to know. And the second thing is, like they said, inclusivity, but then again, you still need to assert who you are and what you do, what is professional. If you invite me here to come to the studio, I have to be here on time. No matter who you are, there are regulations, there are ways the profession is kind of, steered towards, and therefore we should make people learn how to adhere to what our profession expects.
And the parting shot is, a day you will hear a politician agreeing with what the media is doing. Just mean there's nothing wrong.
Right. Yeah, and then for me, and that's why I wouldn't want the media to be reduced as who's the winner and who's the... I think our role as media is much more important than looking at this as we won. I mean, it wasn't a media provided the platform. Did it do that? Yes. But, when we then reduce ourselves to we won this and these people didn't, then we are forgetting what our role is. I think our role is much higher. We have been placed at a very much higher pedestal, and so we cannot reduce ourselves to competing, against, some of these other...
On matters of national interest, media is a facilitator. You have to be a facilitator.
Right.
If it was something against our country, then you become a collaborator. But in this case, you are a facilitator, and in the little way you're doing it, I think we must applaud.
And of course, media's role really is going to be a make or break, for the next 12 days as we head to the elections. And the manner in which the media has also covered some of these key election issues, especially when it comes to court rulings and issues surrounding the IEBC, has also been key. Now, the most recent is IEBC's decision to overhaul the manner in which presidential election results are transmitted. IEBC says they will not be issuing regular updates on results streaming in at the National Tallying Center until they get all the votes cast in all the 338 tallying centers. So this is something different from all other elections that we've had. But the first question and the first concern, Eric, would be, is this going to interfere in any way with media coverage of the elections?
It's obvious that somehow it will interfere with how we'll be relaying information to the public, because the media has got a responsibility of getting that information from IEBC and pass that information to the public. However, I believe that the media is spread all over the country. And once the results have been released at the polling station and at the constituency level, then it allows the media to relay that information to the public. So that means that the media will actually now have got a much bigger role than we expected, of ensuring that we get the results from the polling stations, and from the constituency level, then we relay that results to those results to the public. What will happen is that now we'll have, the media will not have access to information as it should be, because we do not know, because again, IBC should now be telling us that this is after the election, or maybe after closing of the polling stations, at what time or after how long are we likely to get that information. I think it also has to come very clearly so that we do not have that state of anxiety among the public. Because if they're telling us that we'll have for them to tabulate and bring together and add all the results across the country and from the polling stations, then that will also have a sense of anxiety, will create a sense of anxiety among the public, because we do not know how long it's going to take. Is it going to be after 5 hours? Because we know there was a case that actually had been filed in court that will compel IBC actually within after 5 hours, upon the closing of the polling stations, they give us these results. However, as the media now, we know we've got a bigger role. Actually, it's good that we've been told at least 2 weeks before, so that we can now properly prepare to ensure that we get the results from the polling station at the constituency level, then release them, not announcing the winner, because that's where the controversy is. For us, is to get the results and release it to the public.
Right, and of course, Koki, like Eric says, so the media now has a responsibility even bigger than it did before, which is, I keep saying, it's going to be a make or break situation, the manner in which the media handles this election. What spanner do you think this is throwing in the works?
This just basically means that the media will have to work together. You have to work as a team. You must make sure that you're on the ground. You must make sure your transmissions are on time. You must make sure your social media is up to date. You must be on the ground. This is your opportunity to really show Kenyans that you are for them and you are really interested in public interest, that they know what the position is at a given time.
And of course, Dr. Buka, this still comes during the debate as to whether or not media should really publicize these results or not. Your thoughts on the whole situation?
I think what's, for me, in terms of preparedness for media houses, one of the things that has been happening towards election preparedness is, the deploying of reporters across the country to be able to provide that up-to-date information as it trickles in. And I would agree with Eric that the media's role in this contest has been elevated, and that's why we shouldn't reduce ourselves to asking whether we've won or lost. One of the things that we then need to do is map out various scenarios, and it's important that this has come early. I know media has been mapping out various scenarios. If this, then what? One of the things they need to ask themselves is, with this ruling, what does it then say? With these statements, what does it say? But again, I think in terms of election preparedness, this has been an interesting election process, because a lot has also played out in the courts. And I think one of the things that has happened in terms of training, that whereas we've had a lot of political reporters, that has not, for a very long time been looked at as going into courts and reporting on some of the things that are then playing out in the courts. And I think for lessons learned and going forward, that it's important that those that cover politics and those that cover elections have a clear grounding on the court processes and court reporting. And I think that, going forward, that is something that has to be included in the training that prepares journalists for that kind of environment.
All right, let me give you your closing comments, Dr. Buka, in terms of the fact that we only have 12 days for the elections. What are some of the key issues the media needs to put in place in preparation for this election?
One is the safety and security of the journalists who will be out there in covering this election. I think that's extremely important, because for us to be able to get up-to-date information from across the country, we need to be sure that our journalists who are reporting are safe. and particularly so for the women reporters who will be out there. It doesn't mean that men don't require as much security, but that's important that security is guaranteed. I think one of the things that we also want to see is, the analysis needs to go on. It doesn't stop, after yesterday, that now we no longer have any more analysis going on. I think we need to have a very vibrant discussion, whether or not it's going to sway public perception or influence voters at this point, unless somebody comes up and shows us, yes, this is the impact of what that has done. But it's important to carry that conversation going. I think in terms of media, again, that there is life after election. I think all of us are getting to a point where, it's almost like after August 8th, what next? Right. So I think media needs to cultivate that confidence through the coverage and the various things that they're doing, that there is life after the election, and that also should be given focus.
Absolutely. Eric, your closing comments.
I think for the remaining days, what the media needs to do most, we need to go back to our laws and find out what the laws say at every particular process. Because right now you can see there are so many myths. There are so many threats coming from different government agencies. You've seen a lot of threats coming from Kaparo Commission. We've seen a lot of threats coming from Francis Wanguzi of CA. You've seen a lot of conflicting information coming from the Interior Ministry. So what the media needs to know right now, we are supposed to now to get to the laws and find out what the law says at that particular point, so that we do not get being swayed or being gagged by these agencies from telling the public or from playing our role as the media. Then I'll lastly agree with Dr. Buka that safety and security of journalists is very important. We still need these journalists after elections so that they can continue telling the stories. So we need to also reach out to journalists and make sure that they are always safe. They know what is required of them.
Maybe, Eric, just before you end up, when you talk about safety of journalists, whose onus is it to provide the safety? Is it the onus of the media houses or the security sector?
Number one, the safety and security of journalists start from that journalist himself or herself. So that you must know that if you are going to cover a hostile environment, what do you need to do? How do you need to dress? Whom do you need to talk to? What do you need to carry yourself with? How you also need some basic first aid skills, so that in the event that you are injured, you see how you can also take care of yourself. So it's a whole process that the journalists also need to go through, so that by the time you are going to a hostile environment, especially if there have been areas that have already been mapped out as hotspots. So a journalist is going to cover those areas. You're supposed to know that your security begins with yourself, so that you should live to tell the story after the event.
Right, of course, and be well equipped. Koki, your final comments very briefly.
Just to add on the issue of security, embedding the journalists would be a good idea to look at them in terms of security. Working with security forces would be good. I am expecting the media not just to give me snapshots of what is happening at the center. I'm expecting the media to go out into the most remote area. I don't know whether it is Kapedo, and giving me the verified results in good time. Because I know some of us will be sitting down tallying for ourselves. So we expect the media to actually be on toes.
All right, and of course, you know where to get the whole story. That is on KTN News. So just stay tuned for that media coverage. That conversation, of course,